favourite. It's a galaxy far, far away from flying toasters. All your favourite bits from the film are here, including this lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. There's a famous scene in the Death Star Trench as the TIE fighters chase the Rebel X-Wings. And you can even type in important messages in the famous Star Wars scroll. Here's one I prepared earlier. Time for a tea break, Jeremy.
Oh, no, sorry, lovey, no tea break today. Just carry on with the item, and could you do it better, please? Thank you.
Now, normally at this point, I'd be frantically trying to work out what the next bit of the demo was. Because it's a screensaver, I just have to sit back and watch. There's loads in it, including biographies of all the Star Wars characters. In fact, there's so much information in it that soon I'll need a screensaver from a screensaver.
This Christmas, I'm sure. Our first review this week is Rebel Assault on the Mega CD. You play a Rebel rookie pilot. The game has 15 levels, which include scenes from the first 2 Star Wars movies. There are some stunning intro and between-level sequences, which whet your appetite for a real Star Wars feast. But great movie sequences don't necessarily make for a great game. The big test is, how does it play? With the answers, Sahale.
The game gets off to a bad start where you test your flying skills in the so-called Beggars Canyon. The controls are unresponsive and you'll die many deaths before you get anywhere. This is one of my favourite bits of the film, the snowspeeder attack on the AT-ATs. The graphics are quite good from afar, but when you get close to the AT-AT, you realise how poor they really are. Another bad thing about the gameplay on this level is that you can't control where your snowspeeder goes. You just fire, which is really boring. There's one good thing about this level, though, the sound effects and the music. This is the Stormtrooper base on Hoth, and basically it's just more shooting. Again, this level's really disappointing as you've got really limited control. You can only move left and right, you can't even move forward. I really wanted to like this because I love the Star Wars films, but it's just an average game that looks like it's been thrown together in a bit of a rush.
I quite like this. It's hard at first, but you pick up new skills as you go along.
I marked this down because the control system is poor, which I think spoils the playability.
And so the final scores for Rebel Assault, both the boys and the girls gave it a keep practicing, Luke, 3 out of 5.
So, 3 and 3 for Rebel Assault. There's currently a lot going on in a galaxy far, far away. The 3 Star Wars movies have just been released on video with new digital soundtracks. When the original films were made, the special effects were all shot using models and painted backdrops. Today, of course, most film effects are made using computers. So there are now plans to remake the special effects with computer graphics and re-release the movies. And producer George Lucas is currently working on 3 scripts for new movies set before the original Star Wars time. Games-wise, there are 2 exciting new Star Wars games to look forward to this winter. Dark Forces is also set before the movies. You play a rebel agent whose mission is to steal the plans for the as-yet unbuilt Death Star. Your enemies are a terrifying army of robot stormtroopers. The game is fully interactive. You can move your character anywhere and duck, jump and look around. But Super Return of the Jedi is the one that SNES owners have been waiting for. The final chapter in the Star Wars trilogy features music and scenes taken straight from the film. There are new characters to control. For the first time, you can play Princess Leia. Here, she's putting up a mean fight against Jabba the Hutt's henchmen. Or you can swing through the forest as Wicket the Ewok, complete with Ewoky sound effects. As with the first 2 Star Wars games, there's plenty of variety in the gameplay, including some very tricky flying sequences. Now is Z, who this week journeys to the heart of America's computer games industry to get the lowdown on next year's hot hardware.
This is Highway 101 out of San Francisco. If you follow it south for about 400 miles, you reach Los Angeles. But the stretch between here and San Jose is the famous Silicon Valley, home to America's high techies. 1994 has been a bit of a dull year for hardware. Everyone's been beavering away behind locked doors on 95 stuff, what you might call hopeware.
Sega's Hopeware is the Saturn console. It's a 32-bit, very fast machine with software on carts and CDs, but no one's seen anything of it yet.
Closer to reality is the Mega 32, called the 32X over here. It's an add-on for the Mega Drive that lets you upgrade to 32-bit and still play your old games. This should be out in November. Actually, this is a prototype. The game is really running on this development system.
There should be 6 games available for the launch, including this one, Star Wars Arcade, a fast action adventure.
This is the latest Star Wars game, Dark Forces. Using a similar engine to Doom, people who get their rocks off to this stuff claim it's even better than Doom 2 released yesterday. In February, you can find it for yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. It's a lovely day.
Perfectly glorious.
Oh, yeah, and the sun's shining outside and everything.
Can you take a passport photograph?
Game. There have been many Star Wars games, from Super Star Wars to its sequel, Super Empire Strikes Back. There's even been a Star Wars chess game. Not forgetting the X-Wing series. And now we move on with another game based on the famous film trilogy, TIE Fighter.
TIE Fighter is basically the sequel to X-Wing, but it's really more than that because it's from the other side. You get to fight for the Empire, get to fight all those ships that you blew away in X-Wing, and see what it's like to be part of the Empire.
So far, there have been 10 games, but only 3 films. So how much of the original films go into the games?
Well, what we're doing now, like with TIE Fighter, is really we're taking a moment or moments in between the films and expanding on them. We'll continue to do that until the next films appear, and we'll probably do the same with those too. But the likely scenario, the first game will come out, that deals with the new films will come out at the same time as the first new movie. And we'll keep it going for the next, for all 3 new films that are going to be made.
There are 3 new Star Wars films on the way, but how many more games can they make from the existing films?
I mean, Star Wars is going to go on forever. It's an actual, almost self-perpetuating universe right now. It really goes beyond being just a film property. There are hundreds of books, you know, now almost a dozen games. There's going to be 3 new films. It's really almost infinite.
The Empire is on the verge of success. Even now, our capable forces, led by Darth Vader, are striking back at the rebel insurgents.
4-time Academy Award winner Ken Ralston is known as a modern-day master of optical illusions. Today, we'll catch up with Ken as he embarks on a new project at his longtime home, George Lucas's Industrial...
Here, 2 more of them! I see them! Wait, Leia!
While there are many types of optical effects, one of the most widely used is the composite, which involves blending 2 or more pieces of film into a single image. This process is not as simple as it sounds. This scene from Return of the Jedi was created by combining a shot of Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia on a speeder bike with a separately filmed background. Industrial Light and Magic optical supervisor John Ellis was an optical cameraman on this action-packed sequence.
The background was shot with a camera mounted on a Steadicam, and the Steadicam allowed the operator to walk through the forest and not get the vibrations up and down of a person walking, and then taking a frame every few seconds speeds up the action. It makes it look like you're sailing through there at 150 miles an hour. The actors were shot here at ILM in our stage against a blue screen. That allows us to make elements that would later be used in compositing the actors into the background that has been speeded up or up to real time at 24 frames a second. After the elements are shot, elements are brought into the optical department. We will composite them here on this optical printer. This printer is a special piece of equipment that was built by Industrial Light and Magic and was originally used on Empire Strikes Back.
The printer consists of 2 projector heads which beam previously shot footage and a camera that re-photographs the images and combines them together 1 frame at a time.
If we just simply double expose the 2 images, we'd have a ghost image, or you would see through the trees, you'd see through the speeder bikes. So we have to go through a matting process to hold the area where we want to put the people back in.
The matting process that John utilizes involves 3 steps. First, he must imprint a silhouette of the speeder bikes called a holdout mat onto the tree background. Next, the blue background is removed from the speeder bike shot. Finally, the isolated speeder bikes are printed onto the background, replacing the silhouette and completing the shot.
Compositing is really a great thing because you can put people in environments that don't exist. You can change the environment, you can make it faster or slower, you can make it day or night. There's an unlimited amount of things that you can do to manipulate how people are in space and time.
One of Return of the Jedi's effects supervisors was Ken Ralston. After winning an Academy Award for Jedi,
for some obscure film called Star Wars, and they wanted him to work on it. And we were reading the script, and we were just laughing because we would all want to write the same kind of science fiction script, but who would make something so big? Dennis brought me on as a camera assistant. We had no idea what Star Wars would turn into. It floored us. It was absolutely the greatest experience.
Following the success of Star Wars, Ken worked as an effects cameraman on The Empire Strikes Back. 3 years later, he rose to the rank of effects supervisor on The Return of the Jedi. By this time, George Lucas had firmly established his preeminent special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, or ILM.
As George got comfortable with how to go about doing some of the effects shots, that caused Empire Strikes Back to expand to a certain degree. And based on that, when Jedi came along, it went through the roof. We had 3 supervisors doing it, Richard Edlund, Dennis Muren, and myself. And we each took a sequence or a segment of the movie to do because it was so big. The main sequence that I was responsible for was the space battle sequence. Compared to the other space battles in the previous films, this one was much larger, had a lot more separate elements, a lot more ships involved. But because of the sheer number of spaceships and how many passes it has to go through the optical printer, any little error can cause a screw-up. The blue screen, if it isn't exactly right, well, your mats don't work quite right. The color balance, if one ship isn't timed just right in amongst 50 ships, then you have to do the whole shot over again if you can see it. There's always some little problem that can come up, and some of the shots have mistakes in them, but you can't see them.
Despite its limitations, the optical printer was effectively used by the ILM effects team to bring the Star Wars saga to a thrilling conclusion. As their reputation grew, Ken Ralston and ILM were called on to create ever more difficult composite shots. In this scene from Back to the Future 2, star Michael J. Fox appears as 3 different characters. To achieve this effect, Fox would perform as one character, have his makeup changed, and then perform another role on the same set. The 3 performances were then combined together and printed onto a single piece of film.
The pizza shot went on for 3 days, and we had to be on top of every little nuance going on in these shots to make it work.
While complex scenes like this have only recently become possible,
it's called George Lucas's Super Live Adventure, a 2-hour, $25 million arena stage show that celebrates the unique world of Lucas's stories and characters. And it's what resulted when Lucas was asked to team up with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus owner Kenneth Feld.
I looked at him and said, "You must be crazy." And if anybody else other than him had said it, I would have thought they really were crazy. But he said, "No, I can do this. I can make it really spectacular."
But why a 22-week tour starting in Japan? Feld, whose productions also include Siegfried and Roy, says, why not?
I don't just think, can it work in the States? It's got to work worldwide. And that means it's got to be visual, it's got to be big, it has to be a sensory overload.
Part of this sensory overload includes Indiana Jones fighting bad guys on a rope bridge, recreations from Willow, Tucker, and an American Graffiti production number in both English and Japanese. But prior to the opening in Yokohama was an intense 3-month rehearsal period in North Carolina.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Dancers danced, fights were rehearsed, costumes made, and sets built. When the show finally arrived in Japan, the audience, for about $40 a ticket, was treated to a galaxy of effects, and of course, the triumph of good over evil.
It's very wonderful. I like Indiana Jones.
Mr. George Lucas.
And how did Lucas feel to see many of his creations all together on one stage?
I think it makes me feel that I'm getting very old.
The producers of George Lucas's Super Live Adventure are planning an international tour for the show, but if you can't wait for it to come to you, you sure can go out and get Star Wars or the Indiana Jones movies at your local video store.
Games got in common. Super Star Wars, James Bond, The Duel, Lawnmower Man, The Little Mermaid, and Jurassic Park. That's right, they're all based on movies. And just north of San Francisco is where the games industry and movie industry collide head-on. This is Sam Raphael, home to LucasArts, the only games company in the world run by a movie producer. First, George Lucas created the Star Wars film trilogy, and then the game Blockbuster. Super Star Wars was last year's big Super NES success, and then came X-Wing, the brilliant space battle simulation. And now the long-awaited Super Empire Strikes Back. If you're a fan of Super Star Wars, you're gonna love Super Empire Strikes Back. It's a bigger game with 12 megabits instead of 8, and it plays like a dream. There's a new Mode 7 trick, which adds hills and valleys to your 3D race across the snowy landscape looking for walkers. And when you find them, it's just like in the movies. I've always wanted to do this. Other new features mean you can run and shoot at the same time, and your lightsaber is an even more deadly weapon. The next big Star Wars project is Rebel Assault, which LucasArts are developing for PC CD-ROM and Mega CD. It's an intense arcade action game which has been rendered entirely using 3D graphics. You can fly for the Rebel Alliance in X-Wings, A-Wings, and even snow speeders. This meteor storm is one of the playable sections of the game, and the cutscenes which link the 15 levels are visually stunning.
Was when it was released at the movies in 1977, and it's been made into 2 games which have themselves inspired 4 spin-offs. First, there was X-Wing, based on the very end of the Star Wars film, the final battle against the Death Star. Then came X-Wing Rebel Assault and X-Wing Imperial Pursuit. The next game in the series is B-Wing, which is an extension to X-Wing. But to play this game, you have to have the first X-Wing already on your hard drive, as B-Wing is only an expansion disc, not a fully loadable game.
November the 25th will see the launch of a new Sega add-on that takes the normal Mega Drive and says, "Hello sir, would you like to be 40 times more powerful?" We forced 2 kids at gunpoint to go down to Sega's HQ this week for an exclusive preview.
Awesome.
Once you've plugged in the 32X, the Mega Drive gets a little bit exciting and begins playing a new format of games with graphics and noises that are simply spanky.
Want to see more?
Containing chips designed to produce fast 3D graphics, it's no surprise that the first 3 32X games are first-person perspective action games. First up, Star Wars. This polygon shifter has been making arcade players regularly change pants since it came out a few months ago. But did our punters poo theirs?
Well, it's got all 4 missions from the arcade game. The graphic looks pretty much the same, I think.
The day of the tentacle in their back catalogue, LucasArts are easily the #1 PC publishers on Earth. I went to their offices in San Francisco to see what they had in store for 1995. New passing connections to Star Wars, the latest being the eagerly awaited Dark Forces. You play Rebel Hardman Kyle Katarn in this first-person Star Wars action adventure with over a dozen multi-level worlds. Your first mission is to infiltrate an Imperial spaceship and steal the plans of that big, round, dangerous golf ball, the Death Star.
I got him over here.
Tried to avoid saying it, but I have to say the D word now, Doom. What makes this better than Doom?
Well, I think it has to be the complexity and the interactivity of the environment. So when you're in the hangar of the Star Destroyer, there's ships coming and going.
Dark Forces will be out next February.
There's one. Set for stun. Use the power on the dark side.
The Chiat advertising agency worked closely with the makers of the Star Wars films. Clips from The Empire Strikes Back were intercut with original
Okay, it's big review time, and we've got a real corker this week. It's Super Return of the Jedi, and it's on the Super Nintendo, and it's by Virgin. It's a sequel to the Star Wars trilogy, Empire Strikes Back, and all that sort of stuff. You take Luke Skywalker through Tatooine, Endor, and the Death Star, fighting Darth Vader, loads of stormtroopers, and lots of other various nasties. It's wonderful. This is top game. It follows the script really well. You've got some lovely digitized pics in there. The sound is up to its usual standard. Okay, I'm not going to slate this game. I'm going to leave it all to Spike.
Well, I do sense an argument with you coming on here. I mean, the game is good. The graphics are really nice. The sound, the orchestral score running through is superb, as usual. There are no surprises. Every section is exactly the same as last time. Your driving section, your platform section, everything is the same. What is the point in that? Hello?
My only little gripe with this game is with the sprites. When there's too many of them on the screen, you get some serious slowdown.
Now, wasn't that a vast improvement? And by the way, I love the helmet. Okay, as I said before, I love this game. I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I can't help it. I've always wanted to be Luke Skywalker with a big lightsaber. I'm going to give it 10 out of 10.
Well, no matter how good the hats are, this game isn't any good. 6 out of 10.
9 out of 10.